Hello, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Loser, my new channel. My last one got taken down because I had a bunch of news clips that weren't mine. But anyway, starting over, here's my new channel. I wanted to do a video that I can't believe doesn't exist already, and that is I'm going to compare and contrast Scott Peterson and Chris Watts. And if you've been a true crime fan for a while, you probably have followed both stories. And the similarities are pretty weird. And I think that it is relevant to talk about them. So I'm going to grab a sip of my coffee. The categories I'm going to break it down in is pre-murder behavior, the actual murder, what their plans were or strategy to get away with it, post-murder behavior, interrogation and polygraphs, and then arrest and trial. So let's just get into it. Pre-murder, both Chris Watts and Scott Peterson seemed like good husbands. Scott was a fertilizer salesman, he was like played golf, member of the country club. I think you could tell he really wanted to be that white-collar, rich guy that played fucking golf with the clients, you know? And I don't think he was there yet, but I think he was doing pretty successful. He was pretty well liked from what I have found, and, you know, everyone thought he was good-looking and very charismatic. Chris, on the other hand, was more of the blue-collar vibes. I think he liked that. He liked cars. He liked NASCAR. I don't think he really loved working for the oil rigs. That's a shit job, to be honest. I was born and raised in Colorado, and a lot of the people that do that, it's not a great job. You're out there. It's very dangerous. I think Shanann kind of corralled him into that job too. He wanted to be a NASCAR mechanic, but all of a sudden there was a family there and he needed to work. And also the difference is, I don't think everyone thought Scott was this very charismatic, good looking, and I think they thought Chris was good looking, especially once he lost weight. But I get the feeling that everyone kind of thought he was a weird, quiet dude. Like, he really didn't have his own personality. Like, from Shanann's friends, and I think they kind of just were like, oh, he's a good dad, but I don't know about his personality. I don't think he was the life of the party. He just was sort of to me, he kind of just seems like a shell. Like, he's either a sociopath or a malignant narcissist or whatever term they're going with these days, but he just knew how to survive every situation, and he was soft-spoken, and he was nice, and he was kind of good-looking, and he sort of just was able to get through life doing that. But he didn't have the charisma, or I think the smarts that Scott Peterson had. Really looking at both of these, and Scott Peterson was much more smart, much closer to getting away with it. I have a feeling that Chris Watts is a bit of a dum-dum, and, whatever. All right, so both of them also pre-murder kind of fall head over heels for a mistress. And both of them, through that mistress, made the decision that they wanted out of their current life, and the way they were going to do that is by murdering their wife, and in Chris Watts, he had 2 kids already, murdering his wife and kids. And I followed both of the cases as close as you can follow cases, and both of them during the kind of while it's playing out, I had a feeling in both of them. It was just like, did you really think that you were going to get away with it? Like, you were just going to be able to be like Chris was just like, yeah, like, I just hope that they all come back, and I really wish that they were here. And did you really think you were just going to do a couple interviews like that? And then it was just gonna, well, that's good enough for me. And then you were just gonna live your life with the mistress. It just doesn't make sense to me that they thought in their head, like, I'm just gonna do this, and then I'll have to talk to police for a little bit, but then I'll just. Did they think it was gonna work? Is the feeling that you just get over and over again, like, you fucking moron. Of course you were gonna go down for this. You know how hard it is to get away with a murder these days? Did you really think this was just gonna fade away? So that's the feeling that I got. So they both have a mistress that they kind of go head over heels for, and both make the decision that the best way to get out of their old life is to murder their family. And so Scott, his plan to get away with it was, at first in the morning he was going to say he went golfing, but he kind of got caught in that lie with Lacey's dad, so it turned into he was going to go golfing, and then instead he went fishing in this new boat that he had bought in. Which new boat, if you are being charged with murder, the fact that you just bought a new boat and have used it one time to go out into the ocean is real suspicious. But Scott's plan was better than Chris's. So Scott's plan was that she took the dog for a walk. He went fishing in this new boat. He gets back from fishing. The dog is there with the leash on, pretty much saying that someone snatched her and the dog ran back. So the dog's there running around with the leash. He has no idea. He does some laundry, and which is always suspicious. If you are wanted for murdering your family and you did laundry that morning, I think you're fucked. But so he does laundry, kind of eats or something, and then calls Lacey's parents. And I think his first big mistake was he called her parents after, she's not missing to anyone but him. She calls her parents and said, "Hey, Lacey's missing." And they were like, "What do you mean she's missing? Why would you use the word missing?" They didn't say this, but in their head they're like, why would you use the word missing? You haven't seen her for an hour or something. She could be at the store. It's Christmas Eve. She could be buying something for the Christmas meal. So he screwed up and said the word missing. And then, it just goes from there, as you can imagine. But let's switch over to Chris. So Chris, he gets this mistress. He works with her and falls head over heels. Shanann, as you all know, goes to North Carolina for 6 weeks. And so during this 6 weeks, Chris Watts gets to live the way he would live if Shanann and the girls are out of the picture. And I think he just loved it. I think he hated Shanann at this point. I think his family hated Shanann, and he always had sort of that in his ear, that his mom and dad didn't like her. And then he goes to North Carolina on the last week of the trip. As he gets there, he finds out that Shanann and his mom have gotten into it about the nuts in the ice cream, and that now Shanann never wants the kids to hang out with his parents. So I think that also was like, oh God, this, for Chris, he's thinking, oh man, this is really just going downhill. My family hates her. I hate her. She goes live on Facebook every 8 minutes. And I think he's kind of concocting the plan. He had this great 5 weeks with his mistress. They went to the sand dunes. They went to a car museum, doing all this stuff. And so they all go back to Colorado, and then Shanann goes to Arizona on a business trip. And I think the way you know that this wasn't, for Chris, just crime of passion where they got into a fight when she got back is Chris takes care of the kids all weekend, and then he calls someone at his work and says, "I know you're supposed to go into this site on Monday morning, but I'm just going to go. I'll just go. You go somewhere else. I'll just go. And I think right there, that it was premeditated and he was planning to do it, which blows my mind because I think there's no doubt about that Chris premeditated the murder. And nonetheless, he had probably had the worst plan to get away with it that I've ever seen in a premeditated murder. Like, either he's just a fucking moron or he totally underestimated how good the police and the FBI are at solving murders, because my God, what a pathetic plan to get away with it is. So Shanann gets home at 1:48 in the morning, and no one really knows what happens, but at 5:26, he loads the bodies of his two beautiful girls and his wife, Shanann, into his truck and brings them out to that site that he said that he would go to, and he gets rid of them, as everybody knows. The lack of plan that he had is unbelievable. He knew that the neighbor had a doorbell camera that caught anyone coming and going from his house. So that right there cancels. I think that he was going to go with, we talked about divorce and then she left me. She took the kids and are gone. But with the neighbor's camera, you can see if anyone leaves. So immediately that doesn't work. Also, all of her stuff. He didn't get rid of any of Shanann's stuff. And maybe, a lot of people are saying maybe he was going to, like when he got home from work that day. But still, I don't know if you can't risk that. Like, he should have brought in all of her stuff with it anyway, with the neighbor's doorbell camera and all of Shanann's clothes and purse and cell phone and money and everything. It was impossible to argue that she just left. So basically, after he hides the bodies at his workplace and all the dust kind of settles, the only thing he's really left to argue with, and you can see him doing this, the only narrative he has to go with is that she left through the backyard with someone that has enough money and like a cell phone and stuff for her with the kids, which just never was even taken seriously, was never even entertained by the police. All right. Both of them, too, had done laundry, which is sketchy. Chris had taken the sheets off the bed, which is also sketchy if you follow a lot of these true crime things. Yeah, I'm trying to think. All right. Post-murder behavior. This is where they really just seem like the same type of person. So here's the thing. You can act innocent from something this big for a little while, for a conversation, for a few conversations. But people that are innocent and people that are guilty act differently, and you can't really for like a 6-hour interrogation for a long period of time, you're not going to be able to act like you're innocent for that long. And that's you'll do things that a guilty person does just naturally. Your body just physiologically is going to do things. And both of them kind of went with the strategy of, I'm just going to act cool and collected. And Chris Watts did those interviews of, he's just like, I just want them to come back. And it's like, was that your fucking strategy, Chris? Is you just were going to say, honestly, I just want them to come back? Is that all you had? It's just like, she left me through the backyard, and honestly, I hope she comes back. That's it? You think that the FBI is just going to go with that, and you're just going to get to move in with your mistress and live a happy life? Like, poor guy. He honestly, wishes they came back. So, case closed. Wow, we feel so bad for him. All right, so the difference, once the cops think it's them, Chris Watts lasted a mere hours before he was arrested and charged and confessed, even though the confession wasn't. But he only lasted a few hours. Scott Peterson lasted a lot longer. And a few reasons why, I think, is they both were very suspicious in their behavior during kind of the first police interrogations. They both were kind of cool, calm, and collected. They didn't have that urgency. Like, why aren't we out trying to find my fucking wife and kids? All right, why are we in here? They both kind of were like, yeah, I'm just cool as a cucumber. Wasn't me. Wasn't me at all. And also, both of them didn't think that the cops were going to find the mistress, which is blow my mind, especially in this day and age, like with Chris Watts, with cell phones and texts that just basically last forever. Do you really think that the cops weren't going to find Nicole, Chris? Like, you fucking moron. All right, so Chris, they both do like an initial interrogation where they're acting cool and just like, oh man, this is awful. I just honestly like wish that like they were okay. And then, all right, so they're both asked to do a polygraph. They both agree. And in both cases, the polygraph is scheduled for the next day after the first initial police interrogation. Chris shows up for that polygraph. Scott, that morning, calls and says, I'm not taking the polygraph. And that's what Chris should have done too. It's like, I have no idea why Chris would take that polygraph. But it didn't help really Scott either turning it down, because they just instantly went and got a search warrant and he became the number one suspect. Chris, on the other hand, as we all saw, did the polygraph test, failed it resoundingly, and that led to how he confessed to killing Shanann, which then led to his arrest, which led to the confession of killing all four of them. Scott was a little bit more slippery. His story about the dog walk was better, and they also just, without a body, they couldn't really charge him yet, so he made it for months. He was not really, in the grand scheme of things, close to getting away with it, but he was way closer than Chris to getting away with it. He made it months. He made it months and months and months, and then finally they found the body washed up. There was a big storm in San Francisco Bay, and the bodies washed up, both Lacey and their unborn son, Connor. He had put himself in the bay with his boat fishing. That's where the bodies was found. Finally, it's enough. So they go to arrest him. He's down in San Diego when they go to arrest him, with his hair dyed, with a goatee, with $15,000 cash, with camping supplies, with, just stuff to hide out for a while, to make a break for the border. He's in San Diego, 30 miles from the border, so I think he felt the walls closing in and he was ready to book it. And they got him before they had tested to see if the body was Lacey and the kid, because they thought that he might disappear. And this was, months and months after the murder. And so he was pretty close. Unlike Scott, who just was like, I wish that they were back. And they're like, Scott, it makes no sense. There's a camera. She didn't leave. She would have had to bring her cell phone or money or something. And he's like, maybe that she met someone through Thrive, that I didn't know about. And it's like, Chris, you're arrested. What are you fucking talking about? Scott was more kind of slippery. And then the trials, which for Chris, the trial was very short and sweet. You got to give it up to the Colorado Justice Department because they closed the show in 3 months. He confessed to everything. Shanann's family didn't want him to get the death penalty, so they took that off the table. He confessed to everything. They, did the trial, which was just basically for just, what's the word? For, not for show, but they just, did the necessary steps for the trial. He got sentenced to life, many, many lives in prison. For Scott, the trial was pretty scary for the people like Lacey's family and stuff because everybody knew that he did it. It was just obvious. But there wasn't really any physical evidence. The only physical evidence, or the only real evidence that was the police, his mistress, Amber Fry, had come forward to the police, and once she had come forward, they had given her a recorder to record their phone calls. And these phone calls, so there's all these phone calls up that you can listen to on YouTube. These are kind of the interrogation that we never got in this case. We got everything for the Chris Watts case. I think we can all agree this is a new era for true crime fans. We got everything for the Chris Watts case. And quickly, too. But we never got the full interrogation for the Scott Peterson. But what we did get are these long, unedited phone calls that he had with his mistress, where you just get to see that he's a lying piece of shit. At the candlelight vigil on New Year's Eve in the town where all the people come and light candles and are trying to find Lacey, he calls the mistress. It's a classic phone call, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in Paris by the Eiffel Tower celebrating New Year's. Like, I miss you so much." And kind of the nail in the coffin is in, he had told the mistress that his wife, she was like, "Are you married? Or like, do you have a wife?" And this is way before the murder. And he was like, "I do, but she's gone and it's really hard." And he like made it seem like she's dead. And the mistress was like, "Oh, okay." Like, didn't want to ask too many questions. So even before she was dead, he was pretending like it. And I think that alone was enough. The jury was like, all right, this dude. And he got the death penalty. And just in both cases, everybody was totally enamored with these cases, obsessed with it. I have been obsessed with the Chris Watts case for a while. Even on Christmas Day, I hopped on YouTube and watched some interrogation or something. Like, it's just been fucking crazy, the fascination with this case. And I think it's just hard because you can't imagine someone just aborting their family. And then on top of that is you just can't imagine them doing it with virtually zero chance of getting away with it. I think both of them wanted a new life and didn't want to pay child support. Didn't want to take care of the kid and pay child support, and they just literally wanted a completely new life and figured this was the best way to do it. Both failed miserably. Both are malignant, narcissist pieces of shit. See if I got anything else. All right, I might have to break this video up into 2 parts because this is a new channel, and I don't think they'll let me post a 25-minute video, but hope this was semi-entertaining. Hope you're having a good year so far. Please like and subscribe. If you have any thoughts or questions, or if I got anything wrong, please let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.